On the night of September 23, 1989, 7 armed men disappeared into the fog-soaked hollows of Harlan County, Kentucky. By sunrise, 16 people lay dead across 8 miles of Appalachian wilderness. The reason? A stolen moonshine recipe worth $300. If you have the courage to hear this story, leave your like and subscribe. But I warn you, this contains extreme violence someone tried very hard to erase from history. Harlan County, Kentucky, September 1989. The air smelled like wood smoke and wet leaves. Fog rolled down from Pine Mountain so thick you could taste it cold, damp clinging to your throat like a warning you couldn't swallow. The coal mines were dying. Unemployment hovered near 50%. Men who'd spent 30 years underground had nothing left but black lung and disability checks that barely covered food. In that economic graveyard, some families turned to the oldest Appalachian tradition, moonshine. Not the romantic stuff from songs, this was survival. Robert James Patterson was 61 that September, 6'3", but bent forward from decades hunched in coal seams. His hands were massive, knuckles swollen, fingers stained black from coal dust that wouldn't wash out. A scar ran from his temple to his jaw, souvenir from a roof collapse in 1967 that killed his brother standing beside him. Every morning, Robert woke at 5:30, made coffee, read 1 chapter from his mother's Bible, then walked 2 miles to check his still custom copper. 300 gallons, 4 years to build, $12,000 saved penny by penny. But the still wasn't what mattered most. It was the recipe. His grandfather developed it during Prohibition. Specific corn ratio, exact yeast, precise temperatures. The result was moonshine so smooth distributors paid triple. They called it Patterson Clear. That recipe was inheritance, legacy. The only thing his family had left, and someone had just stolen it. September 20th, 1989, night. Robert kept the recipe in a metal lockbox, hidden under barn floorboards. Simple, effective. On the evening of September 20th, he checked it before bed. Normal. The next morning, the box sat open, empty. Robert stood in that barn for 20 minutes, staring at nothing. His breathing came fast and shallow. His hands opened and closed like they were squeezing invisible throats. Only 4 people outside his family knew that recipe existed, and one of them, Dwayne McCall, had been asking about moonshine prices in Middlesboro 3 weeks earlier. In the mountains there are rules older than law. You don't steal a man's livelihood, and if you do, the debt gets settled. Not in courtrooms, in blood. But who exactly was Dwayne McCall? And why would he risk everything for a piece of paper? Dwayne McCall, 55, lived 6 miles east near the abandoned Everett's mining camp. Built like a bull, red beard, 3 fingers missing on his left hand, conveyor belt accident, 1976, ran a mechanic shop from his garage. His 4 brothers, Tommy, Roy, Carl, Kevin, worked odd jobs, survived however they could. These weren't criminals, just desperate men watching their families sink into poverty. Dwayne's daughter needed surgery they couldn't afford. His son wanted vocational school. Principles feel like luxuries when you're drowning. Word traveled through Harlan County like creek water. The Patterson recipe was legendary, worth thousands to the right buyer. What happened next would turn 6 miles of mountain hollows into a graveyard. September 21st, 3 p.m., Robert Patterson pulled his Ford into Dwayne's shop. The impact wrench screamed. Dwayne was under a Dodge, legs sticking out. Robert waited, didn't call out. Just stood there until Dwayne rolled out and saw boots beside his toolbox. Robert. Dwayne stood slowly, wiping grease. What brings you by? My recipe. Robert's voice was flat, empty. Disappeared 2 nights ago. Figure you might know something. Dwayne's face showed nothing. That's unfortunate, but I don't know nothing about your business. I'm giving you until tomorrow, September 22nd, 4 o'clock. Return what's mine. We forget this happened. Silence. Don't return it. Robert paused. Mountain handles mountain. 2 mechanics heard everything. Within hours, every family in Harlan County knew the Pattersons and McCalls were headed for violence. But would Dwayne return the recipe? Or had pride already sealed everyone's fate? September 22nd, 4 p.m. Robert stood on his porch watching the sun sink behind Pine Mountain. No truck came, no phone call, no McCall brother, just silence. His wife Sarah appeared behind him. Maybe they don't have it. Maybe you're wrong. I'm not wrong. Call the sheriff. Sheriff's 40 miles away. By the time he files paperwork, that recipe's sold across 3 states. He looked at her. You know how this works. Mountain handles mountain. Sarah's face went pale. Everyone knew what that meant. Think about the boys, Robert. I am. What kind of man teaches his sons you can be robbed and do nothing? He turned back to the sunset. I gave fair warning. Rest is on them. Inside, Sarah cried. Robert heard but didn't follow. Some decisions you make alone. That evening, Robert made calls. Short, direct. His 3 sons, James, 38, Michael, 35, David, 32. Former miners, hunters since childhood. His 3 nephews, Lucas, 29, Frank, 27, Samuel, 25. He didn't explain much. Just, tomorrow night, bring your rifle. We settle a debt. In Appalachia, those words carried weight older than the mountains. September 23rd passed normally. Robert worked on his truck. Sons did their routines. But in barns across 3 hollows, 7 men cleaned rifles, loaded magazines, said goodbye to families without saying goodbye. At 10:30 p.m., they gathered at a logging road 2 miles from the McCall properties. What happened next would become the most systematic massacre in Kentucky history. 11:47 p.m., temperature 38 degrees. Fog so thick flashlights were useless. The only sounds whined through bare branches, boots on frozen leaves, the metallic click of rifle bolts. Robert gave hand signals, learned in Vietnam, never forgotten. The 7 men spread out, moving toward 5 McCall properties scattered across the hollow. No words, just purpose. At 11:52 p.m., they reached the first trailer, Dwayne McCall's. A single yellow light buzzed outside. Through the window, the blue flicker of television. Robert put his hand on the door. Cold metal. Last chance to turn back. He opened it instead. Dwayne sat on a couch, beer in hand, watching TV. Turned at the sound. Saw Robert. Saw the Winchester. Understanding came slowly. Confusion. Then recognition. Then fear. Robert, what? You had your chance. The rifle spoke once. Dwayne fell backward, beer shattered on linoleum. The TV kept playing. Canned laughter, nobody was watching anymore. But Dwayne's wife, Lisa, screamed from the bedroom. James moved toward the hallway. No, Robert said. Women and children. That's the line. They left Lisa screaming and moved to the next property. 12:03 a.m. Tommy McCall's cabin. Making a sandwich in the kitchen, bologna, cheese, mayonnaise spread across the counter. Turned when they entered, dropped his knife. Jesus, Robert. Your brother stole from me. You stood by. I didn't know nothing. You're a McCall. That's enough. Tommy raised his hands. I got 2 kids sleeping right there. Robert felt something crack inside. Kids. Innocent. He looked at James, who stared at the bedroom door. 30 seconds to say goodbye. Tommy stumbled to the door, opened it, whispered to his children, told them he loved them, told them stay inside no matter what, came back out. Tears on his face. They're babies, Robert. Should have thought about that. The rifle cut him off mid-sentence. Outside, fog thickened. Gunshots echoed from other properties. Robert's sons and nephews working methodically. Roy McCall, Carl, Kevin. Extended family members who'd known about the theft and said nothing. Imagine yourself in that hollow. Fog so thick you can't see 10 feet. Gunshots cracking through silence. Screaming, then nothing. Would you run? Would you fight? Would you freeze? 1:38 a.m. 16 dead. The Pattersons regrouped at the logging road. No one spoke. William, the youngest nephew, was crying. Michael looked sick. James's face had gone blank, the expression soldiers get after seeing too much. Robert climbed into his truck, put the Winchester on the passenger seat. His hands finally shook. "What do we do now?" James asked. Robert stared at the dark forest. "We go home. We wait for them to come." They drove through fog and darkness. 7 men who'd crossed a line they could never uncross. 6 hours later, a Kentucky state trooper found the first body. By noon, FBI had turned the hollow into a command center. By evening, the story hit national news. On September 30th, 1989, FBI agents approached the Patterson property expecting a shootout. Instead, they found Robert sitting on his porch, unarmed, his sons and nephews behind him, all waiting. "Figured you'd be coming," Robert said. They were arrested without resistance. 10 men who'd eliminated 16 over a stolen recipe. The trial lasted 6 weeks. Robert got life without parole. His sons and nephews, 25 to 40 years each. When asked if it was worth it, Robert said only, "Ask me when I'm dying in prison." He died in 2024, age 96, having served 35 years. His last words, "I protected what was mine." But here's what haunts investigators still. They never found the recipe. Not in the McCall properties. Not sold to distributors. It vanished that night and never surfaced. Did Dwayne even steal it? Or did someone else take advantage of suspicion between 2 desperate families? The truth died with 16 men in a fog-choked hollow. This story isn't about moonshine. It's about what we become when systems fail us. When law is 40 miles away. When desperation meets pride. Where's the line between protecting what's yours and destroying everything? Between justice and murder? If someone stole your family's only lifeline, and authorities couldn't help, what would you do? Comment below, because these stories aren't just history. They're happening right now in forgotten places where desperation turns ordinary people into something unrecognizable. Subscribe for more true stories the world tried to bury. Until next time, remember, monsters aren't always born. Sometimes they're made. One stolen recipe, one refused warning, one desperate night at a time.